When my mom was very young, she and her brother found a Ouija board in the attic of our family's church. They figured it was safe and played with it. Whoever they talked told them things like their mother's birthday. Apparently, they thought it was great and ran down to ask my grandmother if the birth date was correct. It was, and Grandma was very upset. She didn't know why a Ouija board was up there, but she didn't want them to play with it ever again. I have no idea what happened to the board, but the spirit stuck around. My mom is certain it's the spirit that she communicated with that tormented her for years after the fact. She and my aunt have told me that their beds used to shake all on their own in the middle of the night. It was never really interested in my aunt though. It was always after my mom. Years later, she still had shaken the presence. It didn't stop her from getting engaged and having me. She once told me that while she was pregnant, my dad would stop breathing in his sleep. She would lay awake for hours and pray that he would keep on breathing. Once I was born, she said the same thing would happen to me. I would be breathing, and the next minute, I wouldn't be. She endured a lot of sleepless nights and worried that I would stop breathing entirely and wouldn't wake up. I have no idea if she brought up this fear with her doctor. What I do know is that she and my dad split not long after I was born. My mom and I moved into an apartment just a couple of blocks from the hospital that I was born in. We stayed there for 3 years, long enough for me to remember a couple details about the place. It had cream-colored carpet, and the bedroom was at the top of a steep set of stairs. I do remember that it had a back door that led to parking spots from the kitchen. Beyond that, I remember a lot of yellow. I think the walls were thoroughly stained with tobacco smoke by the time I was able to form memories about that place. My mother told me that one of the scariest experiences of her life happened in that apartment. I was way too young to remember because I was in a car seat for this event. She told me that she came in the door and set my car seat on the floor so she could lock up. When she turned to do that, she heard a crash at the opposite end of the short hall. She whipped around and found that a decorative statue, which once had been pressed up against the wall at the back of an end table, was shattered on the floor. She didn't even get the chance to move before she smelt something horrible and saw the end of the hall become darker, as if sunlight wasn't shining through any of the open blinds. She was horribly frightened and picked up my car seat. The movement made me scream, and over it, she heard something heavy running her way. She said that whatever it was must have been huge, and she ran out of the door with me. It took her an hour of driving around and a friend to escort her in before she would go back in the apartment again. When they got back, it was gone. The statue was still shattered on the floor, and her friend summarized that she must have knocked it over there, but there was still a light ring of dust near the back center of the table where the statue was meant to be. She threw away the pieces, and she's always been a little sad about it. Apparently, it was part of a set of 3 statues. My grandmother had one, my aunt had one, and my mother. All 3 have since broken. I've had my own encounters with this thing. I've heard something chase me down hallways when nobody else was home. I've seen it tons of times, watching my mother while she sleeps. It's only come to bother me when my depression was really bad. If I felt like I wanted to die, it was right there. I would be distraught and weeping because I was truly considering ending my own life. Then all of a sudden there would be a darkness near me. I'd go from horribly upset to terrified in an instant. At the same time, my suicidal thoughts seemed to be amplified. I quickly learned to tell it to go away. It would leave if I was forceful enough, but the depression lingered. That thing wasn't the source, but it definitely seemed to enjoy that I was suffering. Recently, I got on medication to manage my serotonin levels, and I go to a counselor. I'm working on my depression, and I felt more like myself, more than I have in years. It's made me feel stronger, and when I decide to do something bold, I'm much more apt to go for it now. Spiritually, I've dropped a lot of my guards. I'm stronger than I was, and I don't need to hide. I don't want to be afraid when I know there is a force in me to be reckoned with. For the first couple of months, I was having a lot of experiences, as I used to before my depression got so bad that I couldn't see past living maybe one more day. They weren't major things. I would see a person that was only there for just a blink. I would feel somebody walk by when nobody else was around. At work, I often feel like somebody is touching my hair when there is no one close enough to touch me. I started having visual dreams, very vivid, and just felt more like me. It's been absolutely beautiful, especially because my lows no longer have me contemplating actually harming myself. I'm not cured, by the way. I still think about dying, but it's not as crushing as the feeling used to be. The thought is there for a minute or two, and then the focus changes. It is leaps and bounds better the way I've been living since the end of middle school. If you're going through something similar, please get help. There's a much better way to live, and it might take the time to get there, but it is so worth it. It gets so much better. I mention that I'm better now for a reason though. I've been bold, daring, and fearless as I was as a child. I wanted to live and experience everything that I've been questioning and everything I can. One of the things that's always scared me, because of my mother's experiences, was Ouija boards. My friends and I have always harped on how stupid it is to use one. You are only asking for trouble, and you are inviting in spirits that you wouldn't otherwise encounter. Why would you want something around you that wants to harm you? What's even the point? That has been my mantra for as long as I can remember. I don't want to be scared anymore. So, I bought a Ouija board. I told my best friend and my boyfriend that I bought it. My best friend was upset, and my boyfriend told me I was not allowed to play with it. Don't worry. We have the kind of relationship where he says that I'm in trouble and not allowed to do things, but just shakes his head when I do them anyway. I didn't intend to play with the board. I just wanted to keep it. I put it in my closet, and I guess I told my best friend that I would not play it. She's told me that I promised not to play it by myself, but I honestly don't recall that. My memory has always been pretty bad though, so I believe her. I was also told not to play it in her house and not on her street. She doesn't want to see an increase in activity at her place. It's bad enough as it is. The longer it was in my closet, the more I got used to it. I started considering where I could play it so that I wasn't playing it in my own home. I had a few ideas in mind, but one day I felt really good about playing with the board. I got it down out of the closet and took off the plastic wrap. I said a little prayer to whatever higher spirit there is and pulled it out. I played it by myself. At first, nothing happened, so I moved the planchet in circles over the board. Finally, after the 5th time of asking if anybody was there, I felt the planchet drift towards the word yes. I asked, "Are you evil?" And the planchet moved to yes. I told it goodbye and tried again. When I got another response, I asked the same question and got a no. I asked if it was good and got a no. When I asked, "What do you mean by you're not good or evil?" the planchet spelt out human. Satisfied with that response, I asked for a name. The planchet spelled out Abel, A-B-E-L. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Of course its name was Abel, right? I'm asking about good and evil, so it would obviously give me a biblical name. I asked Abel, "Are you here to harm me?" The planchette moved to yes. I moved the planchette to goodbye. I told Abel we're done and that he has to leave. The next spirit I spoke with called itself Finder. It told me it was evil, and I told it to go away too. The final time I asked for a spirit to come forward, I got one that said it was good and evil. I figured that was the best I was going to get, so I went with it and asked for a name. It spelled Abeixt. I told it that that wasn't a real name, and it moved the planchette to yes, but it was still the only name it would give. I asked this thing if it was just Abel or Finder with a different name. It moved the planchette to no. I asked if this name was a human spirit, and the planchette moved to yes. I asked if it was haunting me, and it moved the planchette to yes. I told it that I had to leave when we were done, and the planchette did not move. I honestly wasn't sure what I should ask about, so I asked, "What should we talk about?" It answered, "Kids." With another eye roll, I replied, "All right, am I going to have kids?" The planchette moved to no. I asked, "Do you mean babies or goats?" The planchette moved to no again. With a sigh, I asked, "Am I going to have children?" The planchette moved to yes. I asked what the difference between kids and children was, and there was no response. I asked how many children I would have, and it said 2. Basically, through a series of resulting questions, this person told me that I would have 2 girls and no boys. It spelled out a series of names, all of which were ones I already liked, so I don't know how much credence there is in that. It also said someone very close to me would have 2 boys and a girl, and that I'd be jealous. It gave me some names for those kids too, one of which didn't make much sense. Finally, I asked if it told me that I wouldn't have kids hurt my feelings. It moved the planchette to yes. I told this person goodbye and forcefully said that I had to leave my room and my home. I said another prayer for the spirits not to linger and put the board away. For days I've been thinking about the names given to me. I wrote them down in my best cursive at work. I haven't had the heart to throw them away yet. I also can't stop thinking about Finder, and I want to use the board again. I told my best friend that I used it, and she wasn't very mad at me. She was upset that I would do something dumb, and she was more upset that I broke the promise that I didn't remember making. I apologized for upsetting her, but I'm not sorry for trusting my instincts. This thing might be stupid, but it's my choice to make. I have actually had a decrease in activity since I used the board. That part has been pretty okay. I am concerned about how much I want to use the board again though. What I want is for it to give me some answers that I can't just muddle through my own or use a word that I would subsequently have to look up. I believe in ghosts and all sorts of things, but part of me doesn't really want to believe in the Ouija board. I will admit that it has a funky aura, but due to my experience with it, I am wondering if it's entirely a trick of the subconscious. I want to try again. My best friend doesn't want me to be in the room alone next time, but I am concerned it will mess up my findings. Also, what if I'm wrong? What if she sits on this with me and something bad does come through? She doesn't need that lingering around her, just because I'm foolish. It's been a week or so since I've touched it. Who knows when I'll use it again?